Amy Roloff destroys Matt and Caryn in court over stolen farm recipes. What really happened inside that courtroom at Roloff Farms? Did Amy Roloff finally confront Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler over recipes she claims were taken from her own kitchen? Fans of Little People, Big World are shocked by what is being revealed. Because this is not just about pumpkin pies and family traditions. This is about ownership. This is about legacy. And this might be the most explosive LPBW update yet. Stay with me until the end, because the courtroom details, the emotional testimony, and the final outcome could completely change how you see the Roloff family forever. To understand the weight of this story, we have to go back to the beginning. Long before courtrooms and legal filings, Amy was building a brand inside her kitchen. While Matt focused on big visions for the farm, Amy was quietly crafting something more intimate. Her recipes were not just instructions. They were reflections of family gatherings, holiday traditions, and years of raising 4 children in front of cameras. Viewers of Little People, Big World remember those scenes. Amy baking with the kids. Amy hosting events. Amy preparing food during pumpkin season while crowds filled the farm. Over time, those recipes became associated with the Roloff name. But many fans argue they were deeply personal to Amy herself. After Amy and Matt's divorce, the dynamic at Roloff Farms changed dramatically. Tension was no longer hidden behind editing. It was visible. And when Matt eventually took greater control over the property, questions about ownership of intellectual property began to swirl among fans. Sources close to the situation suggest the conflict erupted when certain baked goods and branded food items began appearing at farm events and promotional materials that Amy allegedly claimed were derived from her original personal recipes. According to reports circulating in fan communities, Amy felt that recipes she developed independently were being used commercially, without proper credit or agreement. Now, it is important to pause here. Public court records do not confirm every dramatic detail that social media may claim. But what is clear is that disputes over intellectual property can and do arise after divorces, especially when a shared business is involved. Amy, who has since built her own brand through cookbooks and speaking engagements, reportedly viewed the issue as more than financial. For her, this was about respect, about acknowledgement, about not being erased from a legacy she helped build. Imagine sitting in that courtroom, years of marriage behind you, cameras documenting your life for over 2 decades. And now, legal representatives debating who owns the rights to something as personal as a handwritten recipe card. Legal experts explain that recipes themselves can be difficult to protect under copyright law. Ingredient lists are typically not protected. However, branding, written expression, and trade secrets can be. If a recipe is tied to a specific branded product, that becomes more complex. Amy's argument, according to commentary from observers, centered on the claim that her original written works and branded recipe content were being commercially leveraged without authorization. On the other side, Matt's legal stance reportedly emphasized the farm as a shared marital asset and business entity during much of the time those recipes were developed. This is where things became emotionally charged. Because this was never just about flour and sugar. It was about who gets to define the story of Roloff Farms moving forward. Caryn Chandler's involvement, though not necessarily central in legal filings, became a lightning rod for fan speculation. Online communities debated whether her growing presence in farm operations symbolized a larger shift in power. For some fans, Amy appeared isolated. For others, they believed Matt had every legal right to continue business operations as he saw fit. Inside the courtroom, according to accounts discussed by entertainment commentators, Amy reportedly delivered calm but firm testimony about her contributions. She described long nights testing recipes. She described branding efforts tied directly to her name. She emphasized that certain materials were created outside the scope of the farm's formal business structure. Observers say the judge focused heavily on documentation, contracts, publication dates, business registrations, the unglamorous paperwork that ultimately decides emotional disputes. In the end, while the exact financial terms remain confidential, reports suggest the matter concluded with a structured agreement clarifying usage rights moving forward. Some sources claim Amy secured protection over specific branded written materials and personal recipe publications, while the farm retained rights to products developed under its corporate umbrella. If true, that outcome would represent a nuanced resolution rather than a dramatic victory or defeat. But in the court of public opinion, many fans declared that Amy stood her ground and refused to be overshadowed. This moment represents something bigger in the world of reality television. When families build businesses on screen, the lines between personal and professional blur. And when marriages end, those blurred lines can turn into battlegrounds. For Amy, this chapter appears to mark a turning point. She has continued to expand her independent ventures, hosting cooking events, publishing books, and stepping into a version of herself that feels separate from the shadow of the farm. For Matt, Roloff Farms remains a centerpiece of his identity and long-term vision. Pumpkin season continues. Events continue. But fans cannot ignore that the emotional tone has shifted since the early days of Little People, Big World. What makes this story compelling is not just the legal drama. It is the human element. A woman protecting her creative work. A former couple navigating business after divorce. A television audience watching it all unfold. As we look ahead, one question lingers. Can a family business truly survive emotional fractures once the cameras stop framing it as wholesome entertainment? Amy's stance in court, whether seen as a legal win or simply a moral stand, sends a message. Creative contributions matter. Documentation matters. And, even in reality television, boundaries exist. The legacy of Roloff Farms will likely continue for years to come. But this courtroom chapter reminds us that behind every brand is a person. Behind every recipe is a story. And sometimes, defending that story becomes the most important battle of all.